Good evening. Thank you all for joining us tonight. We are going to go ahead and get started with our January meeting. It's January the 12th. We will start with calling the meeting to order at 6:01 p.m. Dr. Hooker, if you would conduct roll call for us.
Yes, Madam Chairman. Ms. Heidi Hensley.
Here.
Ms. Linda Davis.
Here.
Dr. Patricia Yeager.
Here.
Mr. Tim Denson. Here. Dr. Mombi Anderson.
Here.
Dr. Lakeisha Gant.
Here.
Ms. Nicole Hull.
Here.
And Mr. Mark Evans.
Here.
All right, thank you. So we do have a quorum. We will continue with number 3, and this is silent meditation and our Pledge of Allegiance. If you would first join me in a moment of silent meditation. Thank you. If you're able, if you would stand with us and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. From my understanding, the recognitions and awards have been postponed due to the inclement weather. Is that correct, Dr. Hooker?
Yes, Madam Chairman.
Okay. And that includes the MLK Literacy Art Competition Awards, our Employee of the Month Awards, and our board. Well, we can actually still do our board member announcements. So those first 2 items will be postponed. Are there any board member announcements at this time? I will start by welcoming our board colleagues. Officially, we are excited to have you join us and look forward to working with you. Any additional announcements?
I do have an announcement, thank you. This year, 2023, marks the 60th anniversary of the integration of our Clark County school system. And so there were 5 students that actually were the pioneers, I think, in terms of moving us to this road that we're traveling on today. Those 5 students are Scott Killian, who lived directly across the street from Chase Street, Marjorie Green-Turner, her sister Walusha Green, Agnes Green, and Bunny Hampton. And so I salute those, many of whom are my colleagues and friends and former Girl Scout troop members, and celebrate them for 60 years of change and progress brought about by their courage.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Very important information. Thank you for sharing that.
So I'm just pleased to report that we nominated former Superintendent Dr. Thomas for some awards last fall, and she is the recipient, or she will be the recipient of 2 of them. First of all, she'll be getting UGA's 2023 Footsteps Award. She'll be awarded that on February 28th. And then she will also be receiving the Mary Frances Early College of Education Outstanding Service Award on April 21st. And I'm very proud to have been involved in that nomination and for her to receive those really amazing rewards.
Thank you, Dr. Yeager, and thank you for leading those efforts as well. Other announcements? All right, we will move forward to our public comment portion, and I am wanting to be sure that I think I had my list here. Thank you. Okay. Just a reminder that we welcome public comments, and public comments will be limited to 3 minutes. No personal attacks will be tolerated, and so you will be asked to discontinue if there are personal attacks. We will go in the order that's listed. It looks like we have several, and so I'll call your name, and you can approach the podium. Our first speaker for tonight is Aurelia Scott.
Good evening. My name is Aurelia Scott, and I'm a retired educator, reading specialist at Clark Middle School. I taught 31 years, 22 of those years here in Clark County. And I'm happy to ask you to vote yes on those 2 items on your agenda, to name Chase Street Elementary School, Johnny Lay Burks Elementary School, and Alps Road Elementary School, Betty Henderson Holston Elementary School. These 2 women played a very historic role, and they also played dangerous roles back in August of 1966. They led the change for education. They paved the way for me to go to Barnett Shoals Elementary School. Now, 6 years ago, almost 7 years ago, the Milestones in History Committee brought forth the recommendation to the Clark County Board of Education to take this same action, along with also bringing in Dr. Sam Wood, because he brought us through desegregation without a court order. Now, the history cannot be disputed. I have loads of history that people sat on their bottoms and researched at the library here. All of the minutes from 1963 to 67. We have those and can share with you if you need them. But during our celebration back in '66, Johnny Lay Burks, Betty Holston, and Vicki Stroud were brought in as those persons who had integrated the schools. And my main purpose tonight is to really thank Sister Lakeisha Gant for responding to the request and the recommendation for 6 years. Well, because these warriors, they really fought a fight. And those persons that came behind them, they did pave the way for us. Now, these ladies knew the success of the Clark County faculty integration rested on their hands, and they dealt with social issues, exclusion, and some scrutiny, and their families were under scrutiny also. I'd just like to say again, thank you to Sister Lakeisha Gant for bringing forth the recommendation to rename Chase Street School, Johnny Lay Burks Elementary School, and Betty Holston Alps Road Elementary School. We'd like to thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mary Hall. It's Mary Hall. Okay. Our next speaker is Karen Nicole Napper.
Good evening, Dr. Gant and esteemed school board members. My name is Chaplain Cole Napper, and I was born and raised right here in Athens, Georgia. Both of my parents are Clark County School District educators. My mother, a fifth grade English teacher, and my father, a retired Clark County School District principal. Because of the first-rate, world-class education that my parents ensured that I received here in Clark County schools, I went on to achieve an exceptional HBCU and Ivy League education. And I have enjoyed tremendous success in this world because of the firm educational foundation that I received right here in this district. I stand before you tonight as a child of Athens-Clarke County and a product of Clarke County Schools to say the truth matters. The truth matters. The history that we tell ourselves about ourselves matters. I've come to you tonight to ask you in the strongest possible terms that you honor Mrs. Johnny Leigh Burks, the very first African-American teacher to teach at Chase Street Elementary School, and one of a very small group of black teachers in the Clarke County School District to teach between 1966 and 1970. In 1966, Miss Jeanette Browning, Miss Johnny Leigh Burks, Miss Ruth Hawk Payne, Miss Betty Henderson Holston, and Miss Victoria Baker Stroud became the first black teachers to go and teach in formerly all-white schools in Clarke County. As the historian in Cedar Shoals High School social studies lead teacher, Beth Mendenhall, remarked to her students last year about this time period, it was one thing to have desegregation where you had 1 or 2 black students in previously all-white classrooms. It was a whole other thing to have white students be taught by black teachers. The unbelievable amount of racism and discrimination that these early educators experienced is hidden history. It has long been buried and ignored for decades. I applaud this school board, Dr. Gant, for taking the time to acknowledge this. Mrs. Johnny Leigh Burks was an exceptional teacher, truly the cream of the crop. She was hand-selected by then Superintendent of Schools, Sam Wood, to integrate Alps Road Elementary School. But what the history books didn't teach us was the shameful, scandalous, outrageously racist actions of the Alps Road principal who refused to allow Mrs. Burks to take the teaching position at the school that she had originally been assigned. Mrs. Burks was then reassigned to teach at Chase Street Elementary School, taking all of the racism and discriminatory behavior that is associated with being a true trailblazer, and all at the tender age of 24. I'm sorry that I don't have more time to tell you about Mrs. Johnny Leigh Burks and all of the sacrifices and discrimination that she faced as one of the first black teachers in this county, but I believe that once you have been educated about her experiences, you will heartily agree that she is more than deserving of the honor of having Chase Street Elementary School renamed the Johnny Leigh Burks Elementary School. Thank you.
Thank you. Angela Finazzi? Angela Finazzi? Okay, all right, thank you. Jamie Mays? Jamie Mays? Johnny Leigh Burks?
Good evening, and my name is Johnny L. Leigh Burks. And I'm making that clear because as you read the minutes and track my trail through the school district, I was hired as Johnny L. Leigh. And I want to say just a few things about the man that hired me and show you his picture. This is a picture of the gallant, warrior, gutsy educator, Superintendent Sam Watson Wood, who was trying to make sure.
Ms. Burke, could you turn it upright? I'm sorry, it's upside down. Yeah. Sorry about
You should have
that.
told me earlier. Thank you, sweetheart. But I want you to take a good look. Let's take the focus off of me right now, because I was operating under the authority of someone in the board office, and it was on his authority that I could walk up as a colored woman in 1966 to any white school. So this is Mr. Wood, and what we are talking about, his name has to be entered into it. It is a blessing. Confucius said, one picture is worth 1,000 words. It's just a blessing for me to be able to stand here 60 years after he recommended me to work on the faculty of a colored school in the Clark County School District. And now to be able to stand here 57 years after he recommended me, and I was approved not by a Board of Education that looks like you all. I was approved by a Board of Education that consisted of all white businessmen and one white wife of business auto dealer. If he had that much confidence and that much interested in providing a diverse education for all children, I think that's something to write home about. So this is not about me. This is about acknowledging Clark County School District history. Yes, I will be happy if you acknowledge the trail I blazed with the name Johnny Leigh Burks at the elementary school. But it's not about me. It's about correct history. And I thank you for your consideration of finally entering in the history all that us, the foot soldiers, did in that tumultuous time in history. And you have a packet from me, and I would pray that you would read it carefully. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Sonia Thompson. Sonia Thompson? Okay. Just let me know if she comes while we're in public comment, then I can circle back around. Sandra Jackson.
How everybody doing? It's an honor to be here, and Happy New Year to everyone. First of all, Miss Lisa, I want to thank you for taking my call the other day, and I'm here to represent Claudia Butts. Her mother is named Lisa, and your name Lisa, so that tells me something. I'm here to speak for Claudia Butts, my niece. If y'all can consider her for the seat of number 2. When she graduated from college, my family, we was not that close, but whatever she majored in, she brought the whole family together. Even when we had parties, she made it where we could have pajama parties, and we weren't even having pajama parties. She called me not too long ago and asked me, Auntie, could you give you a little money to help with this little child going to Jekyll Island? And I'm thinking, oh God. Which I went on and gave her $50. And I called back. I said, Claudia, did you get the money? She said, I got a little bit more. I said, well, what you gonna do about the rest? She said, I'm gonna give the rest to the child. And she don't have no children. And that is a blessing for her to even consider a child. And I wanted to tell y'all, she is on the Girl Scout committee. She got a lot of little black children, little black girls on the Girl Scout committee, got them reading better, doing their homework, and their grades are excellent. Plus, she work at Nellie B in the summertime with the tennis kids. She done help so many Nellie B kids in spring and Nellie B with their grades, and that is wonderful. When she was real small, I was working at this wood plant in Carver, and this white lady, she had breast cancer. They had took one of her breasts off, which, you know, I went to HR just to mention, you know, just to say that she prayed for this lady. I went to pick up my check that day, and I happened to bring her with me. When I went to the HR to get my check, they asked me, Sandra, you got Claudia. Could she pray for the lady? And I thought that was strange. She prayed for the lady that had breast cancer. I saw the lady 3 weeks ago. The lady is still living to this day. So I'm here to speak on Claudia Butts. Could y'all please consider her on the seat? You can trust her. She's good with kids. She's good with communication. And in my family, she just brings the family together. And on top of that, my mama put her on her bank account. And she don't help my mom with her bills. She helped my mom remember all her important things. So as 2023, I'm here to ask y'all, please consider Claudia Butts. Thank you, and have a good night.
Tabitha Green. All right. Jonathan Holston.
Good evening, Dr. Grant and the members of this Athens Clarke County School System. My name is Jonathan Holston. I serve as the resident bishop of the South Carolina Annual Conference of the United Methodist Church, one of 56 elected officials in that denomination. I'm here to speak on behalf of an item that is before you to name Alps Road Elementary School after my mother, Betty Henderson Holston. I'm her son. I had an opportunity to live through the times of segregation and then integration here in the Athens Clarke County School System. And I can tell you that I had a chance to observe. So I'm a child of this community. I'm a child who's been raised in the school systems of this community. And I'm a child who observed my mom and my dad as both educators within the school system to live in the midst of all of that. It was the Supreme Court decision of 1954, Brown versus the Board of Education, that changed the landscape of education in the United States. And it was this case that made segregated schools illegal under the 14th Amendment. Those winds of change would eventually reach Georgia, in particular Athens, Georgia. And those terms such as separate but equal and freedom of choice, terminologies of that day eventually led to the baby steps of change in 1963. While that spotlight was always on the integration of children into schools, 3 educators, black educators, were assigned to predominantly white elementary schools to begin the integration of teachers into the classroom. These unsung heroines of change deserve our recognition for their achievements and for their sacrifice in the face of significant change in the Athens Clarke County community. One of those courageous women was Mrs. Betty Henderson Holston, who served as an educator at the Alps Road Elementary School. When she was assigned there, she was not assigned in the school building. She was assigned in a room meant for janitors outside of the building. She taught school, her children, in that building, and she had to bring them into the building for any other activity. In the middle of the year, the principal gave her a new class in which she had to teach them the basic elements of what we need to do to survive in our society. My friends, 57 years ago, Dr. Sam Wood made a decision to place teachers of the black hue in these schools. It is now time to recognize the contributions of these educators who contributed mightily to this community. And I ask that you consider my mother to be one who's renamed for the Alps Road Elementary School. Thank you for listening to me tonight.
Thank you. Mara Zuniga? Zuniga?
Zuniga.
Thank you, I apologize.
That's okay. It's a hard name to pronounce. Good evening. My name is Mara Zuniga. I'm a resident of Athens, previous LSGT member for Winnebelle Elementary and Cedar Shoals as a mother and business owner. I'm here for Ms. Mary Bagby. In the short time that I've known Ms. Mary Bagby, I've seen some characteristics that really stand out to me. Ms. Bagby is kind, patient, and persistent. She called to introduce herself to me one day and invited me kindly to join the meeting she was holding in the Nellie B neighborhood so I could also help her with the Spanish community. I was unable to go because of schedule conflicts, but she did not give up. She persisted and patiently continued kindly until one day that I could. In one of her events, her 6th annual Christmas Eve brunch that was attended by Ms. Johnny Burks, Ms. Aurelia Scott, and Commissioner Tiffany Taylor, I was at a table that held an empty seat next to me. A homeless lady came to fill it. She was eating quickly and looked nervous as though she felt out of place. During our conversation, Ms. Bagby came over to ask me if I would like something to drink, and then she asked the lady next to me the same, in the same fashion, in the same way. Why do I mention this small observation? Because it's in those small actions you can tell what a person is about. There was no difference to Ms. Bagby between me and this homeless lady. We were both the same in her eyes. She sees all of us as children of God. I've heard people say Ms. Bagby has a strong character. What do I see? Passion. Ms. Bagby has passion that can be used for betterment of the lives of all children and all parents in Athens. Ms. Bagby is part of the history of Athens, and she remains steadfast, believing that this community can continue to overcome challenges that remain through the fruitfulness of love and understanding. Ms. Bagby does weekly meetings in East Athens trying to help underprivileged community members, the homeless, and is frequently trying to see how she can serve and encourage. She is frank and transparent, which in turn gives way to probably a needed conversation. Community members have continually asked all leaders in Athens to be more transparent. She holds no agenda other than helping all parents and all children get ahead. Through me, she has already engaged the Spanish community. I will feel honored to continue connecting this way with Ms. Bagby if this board sees engaging the Spanish community as important as well. You will get an honest, transparent, loving, passionate, and always ready to serve member with no hidden agenda if you appoint Ms. Bagby for District 2. Thank you. Gracias.
Mary P. Bagby.
Good evening to the board and the superintendent. My name is Mary P. Bagby, and I reside on East Broad Street in Athens. Been in the same house over 40 years. And tonight I'm here to ask you to please consider and do honor Mrs. Jenna Leigh Burks to have her name on Chase Street Elementary School, as well as Ms. Betty Holston at Alps Road. I know both of these ladies. I've known Mrs. Jenna Leigh Burks for about 14 years. She is an educator. She looks exactly like my baby sister. They have the same persona, the same look. Although I lost my baby sister about 20 years ago, she was an educator as well. Master Sergeant in the Air Force for 20 years. And so Mrs. Jenna Leigh Burks is a very proper lady. She's very strict. She's very confident in what she does. She's very caring. And even now, every year at the Human Relations Council, Mrs. Jenna Leigh Burks walks in a sponsored student. Every year, she sponsors a child, spends so much money, and she walks with that person that she mentors financially. She's still doing this, although she's retired. And I ask y'all to consider naming the schools after her and Mrs. Holston. I've met Mrs. Holston too, and she's tried to participate in different things with me, but because of her health, she has not been able to. But she's very supportive, and let's remember these ladies. Let's continue their legacy. I thank you for doing that for me. And also, I'd like to say for myself, I would like to y'all to consider me to be on the board because I would like to serve my community. I would like for the parents to feel that they can come to me and come to the board. I want them to be comfortable. I want them to feel.
Ms. Bagby, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but you will have actually some additional time to share with us information, any additional information that you want us to consider as we select candidates.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes,
Well, I
ma'am.
do want you to consider and just know without a shadow of a doubt that these two ladies are worthy. They are worthy of this acknowledgement. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bagby. All right, and Tawana Maddox, I don't think is here tonight. And so that concludes our public comments. Did I miss someone who came in that was on the? Yes, sir. Hold on one second for us. Do you know what time that was? Okay. Give us just a few seconds, and if that call is there, you certainly would be welcome to. Okay. Ms. Palmer does not have a voicemail, and so what that means is that that's generally that is our policy that people sign up, before, is it 3? Before 4. And so we can talk after the meeting is over. Certainly would want you to be able to participate, but that means you may have to do your comment or give your comment at next month's meeting. And you can also send your comments in writing as well. And then in addition to that, all board members are here after the meeting, and so if you would like to go ahead and speak with us about some of the things you want to share in your letter or public comment, feel free to do that as well. Okay. I saw a hand, and I know that there was a Sonia Thompson delayed and a Tabitha Green. Are those either? Okay. It is a little bit difficult. It is difficult for us to verify that in the moment, so I'm not saying I don't believe you, but our process generally is that we record the names as they're left. And so I'm not saying that you did or didn't, but because I don't have it here and I can't verify it this quickly, I would share the same thing that I shared with earlier, that if you want to share your comments with us individually, feel free to do so. Also, send those public comments in writing, and then also we will make a note to be sure that you are placed on the agenda for next month's meeting. Sure. And what were your 2 names again, just so we can have them for the record? Okay, thank you, and I apologize for that. All right, we are going to move forward from our public comment area here. Thank you to those of you that provided public comments. We're going to move forward to item 4, and that is to amend and/or adopt the agenda. The floor is open.
I move that we adopt the agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Davis, a second by Mr. Denson. Any follow-up discussion? All right, all in favor of adopting the agenda before us, if you would, raise your hands and say aye. Aye. Any opposed, the same signs.
Aye.
Ms. Palmer, did you get Ms. Hull? Okay, perfect. All right, we will move forward to our informational items, and we'll start with the early Head Start Head Start Policy Council, those meeting minutes, and then our SPLOS monthly report. Any additional discussions or questions?
I'd like to reserve my comments until next month, since I am honestly confessing that I did not get a chance to see those.
Okay. You said, just to be sure, I couldn't hear you that well, you said you want to reserve your comments until next month, Ms. Davis?
Yes.
Okay. All right, any additional comments? Okay, none for Early Head Start, none for SPLOS monthly report. Okay. We'll move forward to item 6, and this is our board community reports. The Community Oversight Committee SPLOS report. Dr. Yeager?
So I did attend the COC meeting, and there'll be another one next week. The one thing I wanted to mention is that now that the Clark Middle School architects have been settled on and moving forward, the next phase, I understand, the planning of the planning is starting for Cedar Shoals. And so I did want to mention to the community that they know that the planning for Cedar Shoals is starting, and if they want to engage, they want to probably get involved early. And so I promised to make that word public. And it's pretty exciting. I know Cedar students are really excited to know that their building is next on the list, so.
Thank you. Any additional follow-up comments or discussion? All right. We'll move forward to item 2, and this is the Georgia School Boards Association. I don't have any additional information. I do want to just briefly say, and Dr. Anderson, you may be able to sort of chime in. We are, well, actually, this is on the agenda as well, but there, of course, later in the summer, we will have the summer meeting, but we're in the process of just trying to gather a little bit more information and clarity around that timeline, so that when we go, whoever that delegate is, we have a better idea of not just like what the legislative agenda is, but like, of course, where we stand, we'll know that since we have to take action on it. But if there are any additional, items or discussion points or actions that we want to put forth as a board. That's all I have for Georgia School Boards, but I certainly will open the floor in case you all have additional information.
Do we have, at one time we had a delegation just for our District 11, and so are we still active in that part of GSBA?
Yeah, we are, and we will select our delegate sometime between March and April. We don't have to submit the name for that delegate until May to GSBA, and then that delegate will represent our district at the GSBA meeting in June. And between May and June, they will attend, or they have the option to attend the meetings leading up to the June vote for the items that will be voted on at the larger delegates meeting in June.
So we won't be making that assignment this month? We're going to do that later?
It's not due until May, so we can have that discussion on either the February, March, or even April agenda. We do have the policy manual for the delegates, and we're going to go through that and just kind of make sure that we're well-versed on what the process looks like for our district, so that when we start having those conversations, we know what we're talking about at that point, and then we'll add it to the agenda.
So will we do that as a board, or is this something that the executive committee is going to do? I'm just not clear.
So Dr. Gant and Superintendent Hooker can add it to the board's agenda anytime between now and May, because we don't have to submit the name for our district delegate until May. And we have received the policy manual from Ms. Palmer, so we'll be going through that and making sure we're well-versed before we add it to the agenda for the board to discuss and select the delegate that will represent the district.
Okay. I think I'm confused because I think at some point we had a delegate who kind of represented our district with the other districts in District 11 of GSBA, and they had periodic meetings throughout the year. They were actively engaged with our legislative process. They were engaged with our representatives. And so I'm looking for who's filling that role. If we're not going to announce that person until it's time for the convention. And we can take it offline because I didn't realize that we weren't going to look at those appointments this early.
So I think the confusion may come from, like, on our agenda tonight, we do have board community committees, and I think the delegate is one of those, maybe? Or no? You're right, okay.
Do you have a mic, Lisa? I can't understand her.
We removed it because it's not due until May 1st. The delegate is not, and Dr. Anderson and Dr. Gant wanted to gather more information about that person or the position.
So I'd like to clarify something. So we do not have to submit a delegate until between February and May. We couldn't submit a delegate in January if we wanted to. So the process for selecting a delegate that will represent our district will begin in February and will close in May. They have the meetings for all of the delegates that will represent each district for the state, but in May, and those delegates will bring whatever we discuss as a full board and whatever we discuss as our legislative agenda, that delegate will present our thoughts at the May delegates meeting, and then they have a formal vote at the June convention where they all meet and they do the formal votes where every delegate has a vote. So that's the process, and so we have the policy manual here. We are going to review it, and then Dr. Gant and Superintendent Hooker will determine when the board is comfortable and ready to have that discussion and to vote for the official delegate that will represent our district.
Thank you.
Follow-up questions, or? I know historically it's been a little bit unclear, and so that's where I think most of us are like, sort of grasping, because each year it's felt different. Well, one, it's felt different because of the pandemic. Like, we went totally online. I think it was the summer before last. And then I think Ms. Gallagher may have been the delegate recently. And so we've just had and I may have been at the first year, maybe. Mm-hmm. And then before that, I think it was Greg. And then before that, maybe Ovita. So I think we're just trying to align our process to the process of that the state has outlined. And I don't know that it's been as clear before. And we can also share, the policy as well, the policy manual that outlines this process.
It's different from our policy manual.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, we will move forward to, that was the Georgia School Boards Association. We'll move forward to item 7. This is the board president report. The only thing I'll add sort of under this, since I know we have sort of a combined work session and business meeting, is just sort of be on the lookout, trying to put together the agenda for March 18th. That will be our one of our retreats. Well, the only retreat we have on our schedule right now. About 4 months ago, maybe between 4 and 6 months ago, we decided that we wanted to go back and look at our norms, and that is where that came from. I think it may have been at our last retreat. August 27th. Wow, yeah, well, okay, more than four months ago. And so at that meeting, we chose March the 18th. And so we will be putting together a draft for all of us to take a look at that will include some time, us spending some time with norms, as well as likely a self-assessment. We're trying to get all of that scheduled right now. Dr. Hooker has reached out to a facilitator just to be sure that we can also get the hours that we need as school board members. And so just sort of keeping that on your radar. But that will be sent out once the tentative agenda is made, so that if you see something on there that you're like, no, I don't think we need to do this, or we really need to carve out time on that day to do this, then would encourage you to let us know.
Okay.
And also, we're at the discussion for the nominations for Chase Street and Alps Road renaming. At our last meeting, we talked about the process. We got some input from actually board members, shared perspectives, and we got some input from Mr. Pruitt as far as just the process and trying to stay within our policy to the degree that's possible. And where we landed was that night would open up the discussions. Tonight would open up a period for, official period for nominations. And then February would be the time that we would take action. And so I do want to open the floor for discussions around nominations for renaming our facilities, and specifically for Chase and Alps, but certainly the floor is open for any nominations.
And Madam President, if I could just clarify, I think this meeting is actually the deadline for nominations, so they need to be made tonight, and then they lie on the table for 4 weeks, and then you take action in February.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. So tonight is the deadline for nominations. Okay. And action is taken at that February meeting. Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm very new at this. So, let's say that I wanted to make a motion that we change Chase Street Elementary's name to Miss Johnny Lee Burks. Is that what we're doing here? No? Okay.
Yep. So you wouldn't have to make a motion since we're not taking action on it. And Mr. Pruitt, please, correct me if I'm wrong, but you could simply say, I agree with the nomination, or I would like this nomination of fill in the blank. But
Right.
a motion for action does not have to be made until we take action in the future, in February in this instance.
Okay, thank you.
And the only nominations so far are Ms. Burks for Chase Street and, Ms. Holston for Alps. So those are the nominations that are on the floor right now. Board members could make nominations for other persons for either or both of those schools if they want to.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yes, ma'am.
So this is essentially a discussion period about this continuing, or we are now only taking nominations?
I think there are the nominations, but certainly if I would assume that discussion would follow. For instance, if there was a new nomination, I'm also happy to, address any questions or have some additional discussions around the two individuals that I've put forth as well. And so I would say it includes discussion as well, Ms. Davis.
Thank you. Tim's turn.
Just if you have a nomination, you can simply turn your mic on and just, yep.
So I think I've talked to you about this, and I haven't talked to so many others about this, but I do feel strongly that the recognition should be one where we don't continue to do this thing where we'll recognize one person and then exclude others. And so, again, having said earlier, this is the 60th anniversary of the integration, if you will, of our public schools. And so with Scott Killian being a student at Chase, perhaps that name should be Burke Killian, because that child was there 3 years by himself prior to any teacher being there. I've talked to some of the people that went through this period of being at their assigned schools, and these aren't assigned schools, these are schools that they won the right to go there by writing letters to this board and their parents, petitioning the Board of Education to allow them to go. And so these 5 were the ones that were chosen to go. So those kids were there. I think Scott was in the 3rd grade, and I've not ever spoken to Scott, but he didn't seem to have any huge trauma about his experience. Not true for the girls that went to the middle school, Child Street School, that is no longer exists. One of them had such a difficult experience, she went back to Bernie Harris School after that first year. The other 2 have varying experiences, and only one of them is willing to talk about those experiences. So when I think about trauma, and I think about adult trauma, I think about children's trauma, I think there's a lot of that, but that's not what we're celebrating. What we're celebrating is something that moved this district forward in obeying the law and actually starting to integrate our schools. So I'm feeling really reticent somewhat in terms of celebrating one person when there were so many others. And when we're talking about 1966, that is also the year that I went to Clark Middle School. And I didn't have a black teacher that I recall at Clark Middle School. Now, it was Clark Junior High at the time. But I do know that when I went to 65 was there, 66, I started at Athens High School, and Mrs. Ruth Hawk was the only black teacher at that school. And she was a beacon for the black kids. So many people took Spanish simply because she was there, and they wanted that experience. I can't imagine celebrating or honoring just one experience, Mrs. Burke, and I understand what you went through from what you have said before, and I'm anxious to read your other literature. But I do know that having talked to other teachers that went through a similar experience, maybe not the first year, but other teachers even after that first year, that had that isolation, that had that period of where they weren't respected and they weren't honored for their profession, that there is time and space, especially in an electronic age, for us to honor every single one of them and to also recognize every single one of them. And I'm not so keen on honoring, naming schools after people. I think there is a space where we need to tell the story and tell the whole history of this public education experience in Clark County. So that's my comment. And if I were making a different suggestion, it would simply be that we have an opportunity, and I think probably the best time in life in the history of our school system, to actually do the right thing and honor all of them. Those are my thoughts.
Thank you for sharing those thoughts, Ms. Davis. Do you have a nomination?
Yeah, Killian, I made it, Killian added to Chase. So
Okay.
if we're going to name a school, then we should name it for the process that we're talking about and the thing that brought us to a future.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Davis. Additional thoughts?
We're just clarifying over here, taking notes. The nomination would be for Burks-Killian for the name of Chase. Is that correct?
If this board is going to do that, absolutely.
Okay. And just a reminder that when the board considers these a month from now, they'll be voted on in the order that the nominations are made. And it could be that all votes fail. You know, if none of them get a majority, then the schools aren't renamed. So.
Sure.
Okay, and so just to be clear, right now, we have renaming of Chase as Johnny L. Burks Elementary, and then Alps is Betty Holston, and I think I'm I'm blanking on the middle initial, and then the third nomination is Killian Burke Elementary. Is that what? I'm sorry, Burke's Killian. Yeah, sorry about that. Mm.
So I have 2 nominations, right? So that's my first nomination, and going forward, I would move that we find a space in that huge Clark Central facility to recognize Mrs. Ruth Hawk Payne.
Okay, and would that count under this nomination, Mr. Pruitt, or since we're talking about?
We're just dealing with the 2 facilities, as I understand it now, Chase and Alps. So I didn't quite catch what Ms. Davis just said.
So are we saying that this is a mandate that we rename schools? Is that what we're dealing with here? Just renaming schools and not recognizing people? I'm not clear.
Yeah, so this is, from my understanding, and please clarify for me, Mr. Pruitt, this is not a time where we're talking about, you're certainly welcome to share those opinions. It's not a time that we're talking about recognizing individuals. We've actually talked about recognizing individuals before. We had extensive conversation on recognizing individuals before. You were on the committee that was an ad hoc committee where we discussed the idea, of course, the naming of the area after the Nonnellys, but also identifying an area and each board member submitting 2 names and beginning to recognize individuals that were really significant during the time of integration and beyond. So right now, I think this conversation is about additional nominations, not necessarily programmatic recognitions and things like that.
Or additional facilities. As I understand the policy, you identify the facility first, then there's the nomination period, and then the action. So we're sort of in the middle of the process for those 2 schools as a whole. Those are the identified facilities, but certainly if there are other schools or parts of, or buildings or rooms or whatever, you start over again with that process, identify the facility, and then the nomination period.
I see. So this then would be for the particular facilities that we're talking about, but certainly if Clark Central were a facility that Ms. Davis wanted to put forth, she would start that process as we did this one.
Yes, ma'am, that's right.
Okay.
Okay, then out of all of that, what I'm hearing then is this is only a discussion of Chase and Alps.
Mm-hmm.
Then what was the conversation about bringing other nominations forward?
Each board member can nominate 2 people
For Chase and Alps?
for naming these 2 facilities that are on the table.
Okay.
But if you'd like to identify
Can you speak
other
in your
facilities. Yes, this discussion is for naming those 2 facilities that were on the table, and each board member per policy can nominate 2 people. And so that's what this discussion is.
So I'm good on the Chase nomination that I made, right? But in terms of recognizing other people, I've got to find another facility and bring those names forward?
Yes, per policy, we have to identify the facility or room before we can have a discussion as a board about who each member would like to nominate. And each member can nominate up to 2 people once a facility or space is identified.
Thank you.
Additional questions, feedback, nominations? Mr. Denson, I think sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So I am excited about all of these names that have been put forward, and I think they're all very deserving names. So I look forward to that discussion over the next month for when we move towards that. My questions and my concerns are a little bit more on the process, which I think we're getting into a little bit here, that I feel like the process is, for such a big community decision as this is, that has such long-lasting impacts, that I think the process really needs to be fleshed out and made a little bit more specific and explicit, and also making sure that our regulation is matching our policy, which I think opens the door for a lot of community concern and consternation and possibly being upset after a decision is made. And I think that I would love us, whenever we're making such a big decision, but also one that's supposed to be to honor individuals like this, that we just make sure it's done in a way that that there's no way for people to possibly gripe or be upset afterwards with. And this, right now, as I read through it, like as we talk about this, where it's only on these specific facilities, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I can see how the policy could be read that way, but I don't think it's explicitly that way. And that's a problem. And also my concern is that I don't see a limitation on how often this can happen. And to me, I have the worry that it could be possibly a little bit too easy to enter into this thing, and we could possibly be in a situation that if we have a board at one time and wanted to, it could just we have naming and then renaming, then constantly turnover. And so I would like to see this process, maybe we could have staff work on this just to really make it much more explicit, much more clear for ourselves, but also for the public moving forward. And I think that that the folks that we name these schools after deserve that also, just so that we can make sure that there's no concerns afterwards.
Thank you.
So that, sorry. Oh, okay. Just to respond really quickly to Tim, that policy was last reviewed in 2020, but there's certainly opportunity if board members or others wish to review a policy for revisions. That can be a conversation that could be had, because it sounds to me like that's what you're saying, that the policy needs fleshing out. But just for clarification, it was reviewed and pushed forward in like 3 years ago.
And if I can reply to that, I guess with another question. Whenever we go through that, isn't that the time that the regulation should be brought into accordance with the policy? Because right now they're not. So that seems...
Well, the board does not vote on regulations. We can review regs, but we don't vote on regs.
Right. No, I guess this would be also to staff that should be part of the process. As a policy is changed, the regulation should be changed during the same period, so that we don't end up with a situation of, you know.
I'm glad to hear that voice, because I feel the same way, that we should review the regs when we do the policy, so that we can
Can you
better
speak up a
understand.
little bit, Ms. Davis?
Yes, I'm saying that I've been asking that we review the regs when we review the policy, so that we can understand the full implementation of it. And then that gives some other eyes a chance to look at it and see, you know, that we are absolutely moving in that direction that we were trying to go to. I don't think we had any, honestly, I was on part of that committee. I thought I was on the one for recognition, but at any rate, I had no idea that we were going to go to a school renaming process, because I don't remember that being a part of that discussion, but that's okay, I don't remember everything.
It wasn't. Yeah. Just trying to be sure everyone had a chance. I did want to say, I do think it's only fair, since I've asked the board to consider this. I do agree, Mr. Denson. I do think that there is some policy work to be done here. When we had the conversation in December, one of the things that I think we all, well, most of us sort of sense, is that this has been sort of an unclear process, you know, even before it was revised. You know, we've had facilities, we've identified schools, names of schools before they've been built, you know, then we've had another elementary school renamed, and it has sort of always seemed a little bit different, where we may have had to either suspend rules or when we did this area, the Vernon Payne, you know, so it's always been, you know, a bit unique and not as clear. And so I would certainly support some policy work here. particularly with the regulation and the policy being aligned and the process being clear. I do want to say that I don't think that there's ever a way to talk about something as provocative as integration. Even as we think about naming facilities or naming rooms or even naming the people without there being feelings that are outside of our control. And so I don't know that I certainly support a more streamlined and specific process, but I also recognize Athens is a place where we are still experiencing the psychological effects of oppression, and that spills into our community, unfortunately. And so what that means is that this is not an easy thing to do. You know, if you name a gym after a person, then you ask the question, well, why didn't we name it? There were 10 other people that we could have named the gym after. You know, there's always that question and always that concern to be sure that we're telling as many people's stories as possible, to the degree that we're allowed to and not infringing on people's experiences. And so I support policy work, certainly. I don't think that this nomination process has to wait on that policy work, because it probably will be a few months based on our policy process. And I did want to say, too, I don't think that identifying a school or two schools after two women, and there were many, and there were others, I don't think that minimizes the experiences of others. And so I want to reject the argument that that is the case, and that when one person is recognized, another person's experiences, their contributions, and their significance is minimized. That is not what this is. I think there's room for all of us. We all have a history. We all have an educational history, and Athens has a racial history and a past. And I think I would hope that this is continuing that process. As we've renamed, we renamed Howard B. Stroud, as we are taking these small steps, I hope that we one day are at a place where we can have open conversations about a painful but significant past. And so I am, going to I'm going to stand firm on my nominations, while at the same time agreeing that we do need policy work. And I hope that is something that we can get accomplished as well this year. And I hope that the board would appeal to the board and ask the board for your support for the two nominations that I've made for Chase Street and Alps, and also welcome the public, individuals at these schools. I know I've had a couple of conversations too, beginning conversations with PTO, individuals at Chase, but really welcoming individuals to come and share their opinions here or reach out to us. I think it's a both and. I don't think it has to be an exclusionary process. So,
Madam Chair, could I ask a question?
yes, Mr. Evans.
Have we received all of the public input? I know that it was asked for last time that people could email us, and it seems to me that most of the email that I've gotten is very positive about these changes, and really I've only seen one negative email that comes to my mind. So I think we've given the public an opportunity to talk to us, and I think we've given the public an opportunity to come here tonight. I mean, there are people who made it here, even though the heavens opened up on us. So I think that that's a pretty good indication of how our community feels on this issue.
And I would like to reiterate what Mr. Pruitt said. After these nominations are agreed upon, and I know we probably need to close out this discussion, after these nominations are agreed upon, they will be out for 4 weeks, 30 days. and we still have to take action. And so during that time, feedback is welcome. And as Mr. Pruitt mentioned, at that point, we take action, and the action can be anything, right? Anytime we open that floor for a motion. So, yep, this doesn't prevent any additional feedback. The goal, however, tonight is to finalize the nominations for these facilities. The nominations. And so what I have are Johnny L. Burke, Betty Holston, and Burke Killian. Killian Burke, I'm sorry, correction. And Mike, Mr. Pruitt, I'm sorry, for these nominations, we don't take action that these are the nominations, there's just general consensus?
Well, it's not even consensus. Every board, as Dr. Anderson said, every board member can nominate up to two for each facility. But it sounds like we have one nomination for Alps and two nominations for Chase.
Okay, wonderful. Okay. Thank you. Any additional nominations before we, yes, Mr. Denson?
I guess just, again, clarification, because then, are we going by the 30 days or the 4 weeks? Because the 30 days would require us to meet in March, but the 4 weeks would allow us to do this in February.
The policy says to not exceed 4 weeks, so we're going by weeks.
Okay.
That's what it says on there.
Okay.
It doesn't say 30 days.
Can you
anywhere in
repeat that, Dr.
Okay, yeah.
Anderson?
It does not say 30 days anywhere in the policy. It says not to exceed 4 weeks.
Right, just want to make sure we're going by the policy, not the regulation then, so, yeah, okay. Because the regulation does say 30 days, right?
Yeah, Mr. Denson's right. The regulation says 30 days, but the discussion of the board at the last meeting when they sort of hammered out this process was to go with the policy, not the regulation.
And so not to exceed, but to your point, there is work to be done.
And just to reiterate, I mean, it's Emily's purview to go into the reg and make it consistent with the policy. We spoke about that last month, and we don't approve that. She just does it. So it seems like that could happen immediately.
Mm-hmm. So even before we do the policy and reg work, well, policy work,
Yeah,
the reg
if that's
could be
the only
caught up.
inconsistency, it's completely in Emily's, Ms. Boness's purview to fix the reg to be consistent with district operations. We don't vote on that. We don't discuss that. That's not, we don't have policy committee anyway. So it's totally in Ms. Boness's purview.
One clarification, superintendent's purview.
Thank you.
Of course,
I was
thank
gonna
you.
say, I can't imagine a reg coming out that we might have had.
So is that something that could be corrected, given that there is future policy work to be done?
Yes, our team will gladly work on aligning the regulations with our team will gladly work on aligning the regulations with the policy.
Thank you. All right, are we okay to move on? All right, we will move forward to the superintendent's report. Dr. Hooker?
No comments for tonight.
All right, thank you. We will move to item 9, and these are our presentations and discussions. Item 1 is our District 2 vacancy. And so I do want to just briefly go over the process for our District 2 selection. We are going to have placed before us our board policy ABCB. All 3 candidates have also been provided with our board policy ABCB, and in this board policy are our board member qualifications. And so the first step, Dr. Anderson will read through all of these qualifications. After Ms. Anderson reads through these qualifications, we will ask board members to come up in alphabetical order by your last name, and you will be asked if you affirm that you meet these qualifications. Secondly, you will have up to 5 minutes to share any additional information about yourself, about your qualifications, or just information, things that you would like the board to know. After that 5 minutes is up, or after you're done doing that, the board will have up to 5 minutes to ask any additional follow-up questions about the information that has been shared with us. After each candidate has had an opportunity to go through that process that I just outlined, we will then open the floor for a discussion amongst us and move towards either ideally selecting someone, but we'll open up the floor for discussion and action on the District 2 seat, okay? And so I'm gonna turn the floor over to Dr. Anderson so that she can go over and read through all of the criteria that are expected and actually required of a Board of Education member and the District 2 candidate. Dr. Anderson?
Okay. If each candidate can please confirm, this is a very long list, so please bear with me. 1, you must be a citizen of the state of Georgia and at least 21 years of age. Must have been a resident of the state, county, and education district for at least 1 year. Must remain a resident of the state, county, and education district from which elected. If he/she moves from the education district after being elected, his or place on the board shall immediately become vacant. Must not have been convicted of a felony involving moral turpitude unless that person's civil rights have been restored, and at least 10 years have elapsed from the date of the completion of the sentence without a subsequent conviction of another felony involving moral turpitude. Must not be a holder or receiver of public money of the state or any county thereof, or who has refused or failed, when called upon after reasonable opportunity, to account for and pay over the same amount to the proper officer. Must not have been fully convicted and sentenced of any felony involving moral turpitude under the laws of this or any other state when the offense is also a felony in this state, unless restored to all rights of his citizenship by a pardon from the State Board of Pardons and Paroles. Must not hold any office of profit or trust under the government of the United States other than that of postmaster and officers and enlisted men of the reserve components of the armed forces of the United States or of either of the several states or of any foreign state, provided, however, that without prejudice to his right to hold office, any person may accept appointments to and may receive his expenses and compensation arising from membership upon any commission, board, panel, or other fact-finding or policy-making agency appointed by the President of the United States or other federal authority, where such appointment is of a temporary nature and the duties are not such as to interfere materially with the person's duty as a board member, and acceptance of such an appointment and receipt of the emoluments therefore shall not bar the right of any person to hold office as a board member. Must not hold in any manner whatever or be commissioned to hold more than one county office at one time except by state special enactment of the General Assembly, nor the deputy of any other commissioned officer except for such special enactment. Must not serve on the governing body of any private elementary or secondary educational institution. Must not be employed by the State Department of Education or serve as a member of the State Board of Education. Must not be of unsound mind or advanced age or bodily infirmity, unfit to discharge the duties of the office. Must have been a bona fide citizen of Athens-Clarke County at least 12 months prior to the person's election or appointment and a qualified voter entitled to vote, provided, however, that no prior state or county residency requirement shall be applicable to any appointed local superintendent of schools. Must not be constitutionally disqualified for any cause. All officers are eligible for re-election and reappointment and to hold other offices unless expressly declared to the contrary by the Constitution or laws of Georgia. Must not be employed by the Clarke County School District. Just a few more. Must not have an immediate family member sitting on the Clarke County Board of Education or serving as a Clarke County Superintendent or as a principal, assistant principal, or administrative staff in the Clarke County School District. And for board members appointed or elected after July 1st, 2010, must have read and understood the Code of Ethics and the conflict of interest provisions applicable to members of local boards of education and have agreed to abide by them. Must must have agreed to annually disclose compliance with the State Board of Education's policy on training for members of local boards of education, the Code of Ethics of the Clark County Board of Education, and the conflict of interest provisions applicable to members of local boards of education, and filed an affidavit with the officer before whom such person has qualified for such election prior to or at the time of qualifying, which affidavit shall affirm that he or she meets all of these qualifications. Must not be on the National Sex Offender Registry or the State Sexual Offender Registry. Must not be a defaulter of any federal, state, county, municipal, or school system taxes if such person has been finally adjudicated by a court or competent jurisdiction to owe those taxes, but such ineligibility may be removed at any time by full payment thereof or by making payments to the tax authority pursuant to a payment plan or under such conditions as a General Assembly may provide by general law. And last, must not be the holder of public funds illegally.
Thank you, Dr. Anderson. And so we will begin the process. If Ms. Mary P. Bagby, if you would come forward. And Ms. Bagby, do you affirm that you meet all of the qualifications that were listed and have been read in policy ABCB?
No one told me about this one right here, but I did it the last time, but I didn't get any other information. I've called over here to speak to y'all. So I have not filed an affidavit. I'm assuming this is supposed to be, I'm supposed to do this after the person is appointed or elected according to.
That's right,
Part 60.
yes.
Okay.
So that's right. We were just going through these to be sure because this is the affidavit. The affidavit that you signed is almost identical to this. This is a little bit longer. It sort of expands some of the things.
Right.
But yes, ma'am, you do not have to have already filed an affidavit. Mr. Pruitt, okay. But do you affirm that
Yes, ma'am.
you meet the qualifications that have been listed?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. You have up to 5 minutes to share some additional information with us.
Yes, ma'am. Well, my name is Mary P. Bagby, and I live at 1442 East Broad Street, and I've been in the same house over 40 years. I've been in different ministry houses because I am a minister. I am an ordained elder, and my ministry is a non-profit organization, and I cater and submit to God, and I serve the people. That's my ministry. But I'm also concerned about the things that's going on in the schools. I want the parents and the children to feel that they can come to me and the rest of the board and feel comfortable and not feel like they have to know certain particular large words. And I don't want them to be hindered and feel that they are subhuman and incompetent. I want them to feel like this is a place where they can come and help get services for them and their children. And I want us to have different things to go to the community. I don't want us to always expect the parents to come to us. I want us to find a way to bridge the gap. I want to find a way for us to go out and meet with the parents. We need to have mentors. We need to have tutoring. We need to have time set aside. We need to go back and start visiting the homes. I remember when I was going to school, one of my siblings shot hooker from school. The principal came out before lunchtime. One time I was sick. I missed school. My teacher came out to visit me. And then even after that, we began to have truant officers that would come out to your home. I want us to get more involved and not be afraid of our people, not be afraid of our children. I want us to bridge the gap. I want us to not to be afraid of them. I want them to have due process in the school system. I want the parents to know that they have a right to reject anything that they don't feel comfortable with. I want them to know all of their rights. I want for the body, the teachers, the principals, the staff, I want them to have standards too. I want them to have code of ethics. I want them to have rules. I want them to be accountable to breaking rules and things. I want them to give our children and the parents the same respect that they want. I don't want us to change some of the policies where a child can be bullied, and then as long as that child doesn't retaliate, it seems to get ignored. But when that child defends him or herself, then there's cases coming up. And I want us to be bold. I want us to be honest. I want us to be fair. I want our children to feel safe. I want us to have monitors in the school system. I want us to have people walking up and down the halls. There's no reason for our children to be getting raped under stairwells, dragged into bathrooms. I want us to incorporate the faith-based people and any retired teachers, any retired law officers, any retired people that have a good report of man and of God and the church to come and volunteer, to walk through the halls, to walk on the campuses. I want us to have safety. I want the east side particularly, I want them to have safety. I remember one time they were denied lights for Cedar shows. I want all the schools to be safe. I went over to Clark Central today, and it's a fortress over there. And I went over to see the shows today, and you can jump over the wall or something over there. I want us to have the same. There's no reason for where I live determine the resources that I get. I want resources for all of our children. That's my main purpose. I want us to have due process. I want us to have equal opportunity. I want us to be able to meet with the teachers and the principals, and I want us to continue to have the parent principals breakfast where the children can get awards. But I want us not to look down our noses at the parents that can't show up. I want us to begin to bridge the gap and have extended family where we can get the community, where the children live. We can go to neighbor, door to door, and let them know that we want you to be involved. We want you to be watching when the school bus drops the children off. It's so many things that I have, so many plans, so many ideas to reach the parents and not just be on the board, but be out in the community. I'm not afraid of our people. I'm not afraid of our Latino people. I'm not afraid of our black children. I'm not afraid of our Caucasian children. I'm not afraid, and I have one person that's willing to help me with the Latino community. Well, I have 3 people, Ms. Perez, and she was one of the students that was on the newspaper at Cedar Shows at the Blueprint. And I have Ms. Mara Zuniga, and I have another young man that we want to bridge the gap. We want to have communication. We want our people to be able to come together and live together, but be fair and just and equitable. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bagby. All right, I'll open the floor to my board colleagues. We have up to 5 minutes. If there are any additional questions that we have for Ms. Bagby about her experience or any information that she shared with us, the floor is now open. If there's a question, Ms. Bagby, you can. Yeah. Ms. Hall has a question. Go ahead, Ms. Hall.
I do have a question, Dr. Gant. So, Ms. Bagby, with some of the things that, sorry, let me turn off my YouTube. So, with some of the things that you've named that you wanted to do, how would you be able to navigate doing some of these things, like talking to the teachers, talking to the principals, going into the community in a way that would not be considered operations and put the board under the continued purview of Cognia and other organizations?
Would not put the board on the what?
Can you repeat your question, Ms. Hall?
Sorry, I'm using mics. We'll put the board under the purview and the review of Cognia, since we're already trying to separate what the board does versus operations, and some of the things that you named kind of seemed like they were operations. How would you go about that in a way that did not jeopardize the accreditation of the district?
Well, I think I know pretty much about what would be a conflict of interest and abuse of discretion. Since I am 72 years old, I have 2 children. and I have 6 grandchildren, and I have dealt with the school board for the last 60 years. So I know my boundaries. I'm also have a diploma in paralegal. I'm a certified nursing assistant, so I'm always constantly under rules and regulations about privacy, things of that nature, not stepping over different lines. So I would not be putting the school board into danger. And as I sat through some of the problems and the investigation that Cogno took you through a few years ago, I am aware of certain things that can and cannot be done. And I'm well accepted in my community. The people love me and I love them. And I do know my boundaries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bagby. Any additional questions? If there are not, I'm just trying to make eye contact with everyone that I can actually see and see eyes to be sure that there are no additional questions. You okay with moving forward? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Bagby. That concludes our questions, and we'll transition to the next candidate. Thank you. All right, our next candidate is Claudia Butts. Good afternoon, and let me just ask you before you begin, Claudia, do you affirm that you meet all of the board member qualifications as listed and as were read in policy ABCB?
I do.
Okay, thank you. So the floor is yours. You have up to 5 minutes to share additional information with us.
All right, so I'm Claudia Butts, the product of Athens, Clarke County, grew up right in the east side of Athens. I'm here for the community, for the kids. I serve a lot of kids in the east side of Athens. I've been working with kids in Nellie B for the past about 9 months. Recently, we were able to award them with Christmas bikes and other Christmas toys. I go to a lot of community events, a lot of community things that are going on between the district and the community. So already out there and talking with the parents of what they want to see happen with their children, being an advocate for the parents, because we have a lot of parents in District 2 just maybe are not educated or don't know what's going on in the school system. So being able to bring the parents, because we should have more parents here at these meetings every time that they're hosted. And I'm kind of nervous. I don't have a lot to say about myself other than what I've written to you all. I think I'll be a great candidate. I think I can come together with you all and be a team player. I'm always a team player. I tell my Girl Scouts, there's no I in team. We're all a team player. We can all get things accomplished if we are together. I know there are going to be disagreements. I've been on different boards where there have been disagreements at the bottom of the board, at the top of the board. Even with the kids, there are disagreements. And sometimes you just have to understand you'll agree to disagree. So that's all that I have to say for myself.
Thank you. I'm going to open up the floor for any follow-up questions from my board colleagues.
You know, I feel awkward in even asking these questions because, you know, we go, we apply, we get elected, and, yeah, that's it. Nobody gets to question us. But quick question around your board experience. What did you really enjoy about the board experience, and what were some of the things that were concerning to you?
So I haven't been on the board. When I say board experience, I'm saying just in the community looking at the board. So the last meeting that I was at was the board came out to the community. They were trying to get the pastors and different faith organizations to come together. So I just like sitting at those meetings and listening what the community has to say and what the board has to, what the superintendent at the time, what his cabinet has to say for our community. I do think that we need more people as myself on the board and out here for the community, because we have to be for the community. I mean, we do get elected to these positions, but a lot of our parents and our students don't even know who we are in our day-to-day life. So they don't know who sits on their district, who's representing them. So we should be able to, the students, I'm here so that the students can know, hey, Ms. Butts, if she's in seat 2, she can help me. I can go with her, I can go to her for my concern or let her know what's going on.
Thank you.
Hi, I have a question. So, yeah, you represent District 2, but once you join us, you represent all of us. I mean, all the students. So what do you think is our number one priority? Like, what is the number one priority you have if you join us on the board? What are you going to fight for?
I'm gonna fight for us all. Like I said, I'm here for the students. I'm here, I'll be on the board side, so I know that I have to put on the different hats. So even in the community, I work with East Athens Community Center. So when I'm working with East Athens Community Center, I have to represent East Athens Community Center and abide by their rules and their bylaws. But then when I go out to the community to nearly be for myself under my thing, what I'm doing with the kids, then I represent myself. So I know how to be a team player, and I know how to put on the different hats and respect the board. If I'm on the board, my position on the board and my position to the community.
Thank you. Additional questions? Okay. Thank you very much. That concludes our questions. All right, and Antoine Stevens. Good evening.
Good evening.
And Antoine, do you affirm that you meet all of the qualifications that were read and that are listed in Board Policy ABCB?
I do.
Okay, thank you. So you'll have up to 5 minutes to share additional information with the board. The floor is yours.
All right. First off, I want to say I am happy to be here in the Vernon Payne boardroom. Thank you all again for voting on this. I was proud to sit on this board when we voted on it. And continuing to look after honoring our community elders like Betty Holston and the greats that came out of my neighborhood, Leanne Drive. So I want to start off my speech now. Former colleagues in District 2, I stand here today asking for your support and to continue the stability of broad spectrum leadership in this district. I present myself as a flawed yet effective young person that has lived the experience of the all too real state of emergency of Black men in District 2. I showed what it was like to be a leader and owning your flaws, getting the help and mentorship you need, hunkering down and facing adversity and continuing to deliver to this community. We as a board and community tackled issues like the early pandemic, community discourse, cognitive reviews, and so much more in 2020. During those trying times, I built myself back better and delivered profusely to the underserved in my community. I teamed up with organizations and businesses to help get computers and desks donated to virtual learning. I worked to bridge the gap with our community elders and young people in building those relationships. And I served a term worthy of praise by Cognia at the end. I stand here today asking to build on that progress that former board member Karina Gallagher and I have worked for the past 3 years. I ask to continue the strong, progressive, broad spectrum leadership that connects every corner of this district to make sure that everyone has representation. We need the voice of a young Black male on this board, the most #1 failed demographic in Athens-Clarke County. We need someone who can share from this perspective of having a disability. We need someone in these outrageous times of government overreach and extremist backing candidates for this board and senseless book bans from the Black LGBTQ+ community to actually represent us on this board. I stand here as the only candidate that has actually done the job and done it effectively to ask for your support in continuing to be a voice for our people, our stories, Our lives, our real issues matter. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to open up the floor to the board. Any additional questions?
Hi, Mr. Stevens.
Hi.
For transparency, you and I are friends on Facebook.
Oh, yes.
Of course, I'm friends with a lot of people on Facebook. So, but I do have some questions. My biggest question to you, sir, is you had the opportunity to run in 2020, and you did not. And now you're returning to us in 2023, and first off, I'm not a big fan of what we're doing here to begin with. I think that we should let the people of District 2 make that decision. But why are you coming back?
Well, I endorsed Karina Gallagher for this seat. My intentions, as I let this entire board know, was to gather myself together after the struggle that I had gone through. It was a time where I needed to build myself and surround myself with mentors to get me to a point where I could come back to this board. So I let this entire board, let that be known when I left, that I did have plans to return and represent this community. And I didn't know that Karina would step down as soon as she did. Of course, that was the candidate I supported to take over the seat after me. But under the leadership that we have had, this community has had stable representation for 3 years now, and I believe it's time to continue that. So.
I'm sorry, I have a lot of questions because I think you're a very talented young man. I'm just, I believe that this school board is very important. And I don't want this to be used as a springboard for, a seat that might open in 2024.
Right. Well,
and so I'm really looking for someone who is going to be a partner with us, because we've got so much work to do, and the things that you've brought up are exactly the issues that we have to face. And we just can't have a revolving door of folks on this board. And so I'm just, will you commit to us that you will see this term through and then run?
100%. My biggest inspiration was Vernon Payne. He was the longest serving school board member on this school board and in the state of Georgia. That's the footsteps that I follow in. That's the person who I got to witness growing up and who gave me my inspiration to even be up here, stepping up here as when I did at 23 years old to serve as the youngest public official in Georgia. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any additional questions?
I confess I didn't recognize you. Hi.
All right. Thank you all.
All right. Thank you very much. And thank you to all of the candidates, Ms. Bagby, Claudia, and Antoine. It takes a lot of vulnerability and courage, really, to get up in front of individuals and, ask to be selected for anything. And so thank you so much for your time and your dedication and commitment to getting this information to us. I am going to transition to the board. We do have this as, I have like 1,000 papers over here. But it is under item 1, so I'm going to open the floor for discussion and any action that comes from that. So the floor is open.
I'm not clear. Are we going to go through a nomination process, or did I miss something I should have read?
Well, so from this point, and Mr. Pruitt, help me if I am totally outside of the law or policy. But we put out the notice, we gathered the information, we have used this time as an interview to ask any additional questions that we have based on the information that's been shared with us. And so at this point, my understanding is that if the board does move forward and would like to move forward to select a person, yes, it would be simply by an action or a motion, and that motion would have to pass by majority. And so it's pretty much like other motions. Mr. Pruitt, am I?
Actually, in the past, we've always followed the typical Robert's Rules procedure where board members make nominations. Nominations don't have to have a second. Then once nominations are closed, the board votes on those in the order that the nominations are received. The first candidate to receive a majority vote, then it's done.
Okay, thank you for that correction, Mr. Pruitt. And that vote is by majority, right?
The vote is by majority
Okay.
after the nominations are closed.
Okay, so thank you for that correction, and thank you, Ms. Davis, for correcting me on that. So yes, it would be by nominations, and then we would take action on that nomination. Dr. Yeager?
So can I make a comment?
Absolutely.
So again, first of all, having been in your position just a few years ago and putting yourself forward, I really admire all three of you for coming forward and putting your name in. We need more people like you to come forward, and I really appreciate you doing that. And I don't know all of you, but I really do appreciate your coming forward. That being said, and I've looked at all these letters really carefully and read your letters of support, and we've gotten some comment publicly. I was most impressed by Ms. Butt's comments about teamwork, because that is a really, really important part about being on this board. And we have worked very hard to get this board to a place where we are working as a team. And so I would nominate Ms. Butts to be appointed to position District 2 on the board.
I second.
Okay, and so we have one nomination so far. The floor is still open for discussion or nominations. We're just checking with Ms. Hall to be sure that. Okay, so we have one nomination for.
I'm trying to text and keep up, but no, I don't have anything extra.
Okay, so we have one nomination for Ms. Butts. I do want to add, like, just to some of the discussion that Dr. Yeager mentioned. I know we sort of had a long history with District 2, and I, just from reading and hearing from different people, is really no doubt in my mind that we have three, I think, very qualified candidates that would be able to join the board, and then join the board in our efforts to support the superintendent. And so I definitely think there are some strengths from each candidate. I do think there is something about being in the communities, and I know that is something that all of you all really are doing and have made it a priority. So I will just about support any nomination, but I do want to, I think I'm going to put forth a nomination for Ms. Bagby.
I would like to put forward the nomination for Mr. Stevens.
All right, so it looks like we have a nomination for.
Do we
for
need
all.
seconds on those nominations?
I'm sorry?
We don't need seconds?
Correct,
Okay.
no seconds.
Thank you.
Okay, and so we have a nomination for Ms. Butts, Ms. Bagby, and Mr. Stevens. At this point, it sounds like, Mr. Pruitt, that we simply take action on each nomination.
Yes, so you would call for the vote first on Ms. Butts.
I'm sorry, could you say it again?
You would just call for a board vote, those in favor and those opposed on Ms. Butts' nomination. If a majority does not vote in favor of that, you move on to the next, Ms. Bagby, and then to Mr. Stevens.
Okay, thank you. All right, and so we will start with Ms. Butts. All of those in favor of accepting Ms. Butts as the nomination, if you would raise your hands and say aye. 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 Any opposed, the same signs?
Aye.
Okay. And so that would be a majority. And in this case, we would not go forth with the other nominations, to be clear. Okay. All right. So I do want to thank all of the candidates, again, that have put yourself in a position to want to continue to serve our community. I hope this is not it, and I know it's not, because I know that there is excellent work going on. I know that you all are involved in things that are impacting our community positively. And so thank you for, applying. Thank you for putting yourself in this position. And, as a board and just community member, we look forward to working with you all in different ways. And we also, on behalf of the board, will accept the nomination of Ms. Butts. We have identified Ms. Butts, as the person for the District 2 candidacy. Ms. Palmer. Ms. Palmer will be in touch with you within the next few days to let you know what the next steps are. Hold on one second. Okay. Ms. Palmer, did you get Ms. Hull was a yes for Ms. Butts? It was a delay in her response. Yeah, it was a delay. Oh, okay. Yep. Okay. All right. So thank you all again. We'll continue with our agenda. And this is item 2 under presentations and discussions. Dr. Hooker, I'm going to turn the floor over to you for our ERSEA presentation and governance training.
Thank you, Madam President. At this time, we will ask Ms. Karen Hickenbotham to come before you with her presentation.
I want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to share the Head Start, ERSEA, and governance training with you. As many of you who have served are aware, this is an annual training, and a portion of this training it's required because you, as the Clark County School District's Head Start governing body, we must provide you with this annual training. It's your responsibility to ensure that the structures are in place that provide effective management and oversight to enable the delivery of high-quality services within our Head Start programming. I promise I'm going to get this clicker right here in a minute. Our training must include both of the ERSEA and the governance, and within that, it must include our methods for collecting the information, strategies for ensuring that we are treating all families with dignity and respect, and strategies for dealing with those many effectively difficult to share private information that is necessary for us to collect within our criteria. As part of that work, you've created board policies on the code of ethics, code of conducts, rules and conditions of employment, organizational structures that have been set to support our work and our students. We have provided professional learning to our staff in goal setting, capacity building, and relationships. We conduct interviews in private offices to ensure confidentiality of information, have signed confidentiality statements, and make sure that that transition process is as supportive to the families as possible, while still ensuring that we do our due diligence with investigation to ensure that there's no false information for those students who have been nominated and included. The purpose of the Head Start program aligns perfectly with the Clark County School District's strategic plan, our theory of action, and our priorities reflected in the needs of the community. As part of the Instructional Services Department, we have the opportunity to serve as the bedrock foundation on which our students can build and begin their educational journey. Lisa, if you don't mind, can you click on that video number 1? We will not watch the entire video, although you have access to it.
Because I couldn't afford any books. Giving us books and sitting there behind our little desk and reading. I can remember that. It was just such a pivotal point in my life.
Today, we're able to announce that we will have open and we believe operating this summer, coast to coast, some 2,000 child development centers. This means that nearly half the preschool children of poverty will get a head start on their future.
Is that the same as this? Yay!
From the absolute beginning, Head Start was never intended as just a preschool. The emphasis was on comprehensive services, nutrition, health screening, health care, social services, new careers for the parents with training and income, helping people get out of the cycle of poverty. And that includes energizing, giving people confidence that they can do this, and it's one step at a time.
I was the only one to attend Head Start, and my sister, who was 2 years older than I am, the huge difference it made. We have 2 people who grew up in the same house in the same circumstances. And I was the person who excelled at school. I am the person who went on to college. I'm the person that started my own business. I truly believe that I had a better opportunity for success than she did because I got to go to Head Start.
As stated, you have access to both of those video clips, and so you are more than welcome, to watch them at your leisure later. But just kind of wanted to begin with that personal story of the impact that our Head Start services can have for our students. Within the Head Start program, we have the curricular resources that support students in meeting the Georgia Early Learning Developmental Standards, which are aligned with our Head Start Early Learning Outcomes Framework and facilitates the transition into the K-12 Georgia Standards of Excellence. When we're determining and verifying and documenting eligibility, our staff must conduct in-person interviews with each family. During COVID, they did that via phone, but we do it in person or via Zoom. We verify the information for the application and the interview and create an eligibility determination record for each enrolled participant. These are requirements within the Head Start programming. Our methods for how we collect complete and accurate eligibility information from families and third-party sources. We make sure we have redundant procedures but we also have the organizational structures and ongoing monitoring and self-assessment to ensure that our eligibility packets are complete and verified. With our selection criteria, which you will remember you voted on just this last month, we must establish the criteria annually. That selection criteria is built on a weighted based on both the Office of Head Start priorities and on local community needs assessments. Waiting lists are required to ensure that we are able to quickly refill any seats that becomes available, but of course our goal is always to serve every student. And to that end, we had an expansion grant just a few years ago. We do have a 5-year grant period, and we must reapply annually. This will be the 5th year in our 5-year period. This past year, we applied for and received cost of living adjustment and quality improvement grants, both of which you voted for us to apply. We also were able to consolidate the expansion grant into our continuation grant so that we continue services. You will notice that the bulk of our budget is in personnel because we recognize it is our staff who make the biggest impact on our students' progress towards school readiness. These are our 5-year program goals. The purpose of these goals is to ensure that we eliminate inequities and help the students and families build a foundation both through academics and wraparound services. On slides 10 and 11, I'll let you take a little bit of extra time at your leisure to look through the progress that we've made. We do know that during COVID, there were some depressions or dips, particularly in the health results, and part of that is just access. Sorry, is it ringing? And some of that is folks' opportunity to go. Lisa, if you can click on the chart at the bottom. In this chart, we'll see our progress our students have made from the beginning of the school year to the end of the school year on those school readiness goals. And you can see the impact of services, particularly when we are able to have a fidelity of services, not just throughout our year, but throughout the program. If you slide down to the bottom page, when you're looking through them, you'll notice it has a comparison of the beginning of the year and the end of the year. What you will see are 3 separate charts, the beginning, middle, and end. Some examples are in quantifying children who entered in the 39th, exited at the 83rd, in counting, entering at the 48th, and exiting at the 91st. Expressive vocabulary, growth of almost double. Noticing and discriminating rhymes, again, almost doubled. And persistence, an area that we're working on not just with our early learning students, but with all students all the way through high school. We see that growth.
Ms. Higginbotham or Lisa? So we don't have this file, and I love data, you know me, and I can't see any of that, so I would love a copy of it. Thank you.
You should have access to click into it in the program.
So we
in
don't
the
have
slideshow.
the PowerPoint wasn't loaded in this action item, so we don't have it.
Ms. Palmer is getting it to them right now.
Great, thank you.
You are actually already shared on that PowerPoint. It just may not be loaded into the system. So it's Google shared with each of you. I know Ms. Palmer took care of that earlier. I'll move forward as we slide back to the slideshow. Some of the advantages to ensure the provision that we align high-quality early childhood education and developmental services that promote the cognitive, social, and emotional growth of our children including those with disabilities, for later success in school. It supports the CCSD mission, vision, strategic priorities, and theory of action, and it provides services in an area in which our community has a demonstrated need. Some of the challenges, of course, is our community assessment demonstrates a greater need for student seats than we have available. And we have limited space currently although our district facilities use reports projections for additional space as we go forward. Lisa, can you pop us back to the slideshow 13? Our organizational
refresh,
structure for
it
Clark
should
County
load,
School
but
District.
The file is not the right file, I'm afraid.
Yeah. Ms. Palmer is taking care of it, and it'll be shared with us, and
Yeah.
we can go back and
No worries.
take a look at.
Yeah, you're fine. You are the Board of Education. You are the governing body for our programming. Dr. Robbie Hooker is our superintendent and executive director of our Head Start services from the national level. The chief academic officer, Dr. Brent Gaskins. And then as the director of the Office of Early Learning, I am the superintendent's designee who runs day-to-day operations. Within that is our Head Start and our Early Head Start staff, but also our policy council, our parent committees, our health services committees, parent leadership. So parents are also a big part of the community of learning that happens within our Office of Early Learning. On slide 14, our governing body will demonstrate how they use data, both programmatic data and external information, to oversee the provision of quality services for children and families and to ensure progress toward school readiness. Within that are our guardian goals, program management, ongoing monitoring and continuous improvement, programmatic governance, with a primary focus on your fiduciary oversight, human resources, policies and procedures, support of the Office of Early Learning as part of the Instructional Services Department under our Chief Academic Officer, and then community engagement. And those are really truly the spaces where you as a governing board impact our work, but also the services provided to our students and families. Within our governance role, you have a legal responsibility to support the work of the Head Start, a fiscal responsibility to ensure that we are using our funds prudently and according to regulation, and also the responsibility to be engaged and knowledgeable in the work of our Head Start. The board makeup has requirements, but as an elected board, you are not required to fill particular roles because as a school district, we have a lawyer, a chief financial officer, a chief academic officer, so they fill those individual roles while you serve as the governing body. We have several federal and state reviews that we have participated in and have the opportunity to have yet another monitoring with the cognitive review coming our direction for the early learning review. But I am proud to say that we have been 100% clean with all of our audits to date. And with our continuous improvement, we have year-round implementing ongoing monitoring, data analysis, monthly reports to our Board of Education and to our Policy Council. And those step-by-step get us to our grant application each June and ensure that we meet our requirements, but also make sure that we take part and participate in our board trainings, presentations for our programs, reports to the public, and also requests as we continue to seek grants to support students in early learning. I want to say thank you again for giving me the opportunity to speak with you tonight.
Thank you, Karen. This is number 10 for me.
Next year, you get to give it.
Thank you, Ms. Hickenbottom.
And if we have any follow-up questions, because I do know we, with our new board colleagues and even with us, I think it's uploaded now, the version, but can we just reach out directly and?
If you would share your questions with me, I'll forward them to Ms. Hickenbotham. And she did share this presentation earlier with you. If you look in your Google Slides, she shared it earlier with you. Am I correct in saying that? Yes.
Actually, Lisa did, but yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Thank you.
Any questions, though, from what we heard and what we remember? Pieces that we heard?
No, that's always an interesting, I love their training, but it's also very consistent. So I don't see surprises usually when I get anything from Head Start, early Head Start. Very prescribed. I kind of like that, yeah, so thank you. Oh, but I did have a quick question because I didn't read those numbers. How are we on our waiting list?
We currently have approximately 100 kids on our waiting list, but about 250 applications that have come in as we're beginning and to have parents looking at services for upcoming years.
Still 250?
It's
right around
that. Thank you. It was an estimate. I can get you a precise number if you'd like.
That's a good number. Thank you. I met someone at the Bojangles, and I told him to come over to the new one on the east side because that little boy was like, he really needed to be there. So thank you.
Thank you, and I appreciate you recruiting for us. Please all feel free to recruit for us.
All right.
All right. Okay. We'll move forward. Thank you, Dr. Hooker and Ms. Higginbotham. We'll move forward to item 3, and this is our legislative priorities. This was sent to us in draft form, I think maybe a month or 2 maybe ago, but it was sort of revised a bit and cleaned up a bit, and so did want to give us an opportunity to ask any questions, to add to have discussion around these legislative priorities, particularly since we no longer have our government relations committee. And so while I'm thinking about it, actually, if we would make a note, we probably need to also make our meetings, we need to confirm our meetings with the ACC government. That's like, isn't it twice a year? And so anyway, just want to file that note. I just thought about that. But these are just general legislative priorities, not necessarily for Clark County, but for our state legislators. Dr. Hooker, do you want to share a little bit before we open the floor for discussion?
Yes, thank you so much. As I shared with you on October 27th, these legislative priorities were captured from the Georgia School Board Association, the Georgia School Superintendents Association, GALE, Georgia Educational Association of Leaders, and PAGE, Professional Association of Georgia Educators. Most of those align if you listen to the governor's inauguration. Many of these things that you see on the legislative priority, that's where they came from. As for safety, if you listen today, he's putting $500 million toward school safety, also teacher raises, and other initiatives, additional counselors for our schools, for mental health and other reasons. So these were captured by our state organization, so we just prioritized them what would best fit for CCSD.
Thank you. The floor is open.
So there was I just picked up a news snippet. Actually today the governor's been repeating over and over on WSB the dollars that he's pouring into us. And so I heard 2 things that he talked about specifically that I know that we were looking at or that we've already approved. One was the safety measure with, I think it was it $150 million he's releasing for that? And then there was another huge amount of money that he was releasing for something else that I think we've already approved. So my question is, when we get those, I don't know if we'll get those allocations because they're for the entire state, but do we have any insight into if we're going to get any of that money or how it's going to be delivered to us?
I'm sure it will be shared. Each school district will get a certain amount, and in the past, they gave each school $30,000 to upgrade the security systems.
Mm-hmm.
Things that we will be looking to do is upgrade our camera systems, look for other innovative things to improve safety at all of our schools. So we will work with our chief of police as well as Dr. Garrett to ensure we do the right things for the students here in Clark County.
So we will be doing new things in addition to what we approved in our last meeting, right?
Yes.
Is that what I'm hearing? Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry. Yes, Dr. Yeager.
I've heard in conversations over the years about the QBE formula needing upgrade or a revision, and I see that that's not really in here. Is that still something we're discussing? Or, I mean, so the governor, I heard this afternoon, says we are fully funding education this year with the existing QBE ratio, which is now, what, I don't know, 30 years old? So I'm just curious if that's not a priority for us to be arguing for a revision of QBE.
You're correct. The QBE was enacted in 1985 by Governor Joe Frank Harris, and that is being reviewed by state legislators. We had the opportunity on yesterday, Dr. Moore and I, to go to the Capitol breakfast. I had some interaction with Chris Irwin, who represents Banks County and is in charge of the Education Committee. These are things that the governor is looking to revise. They're hoping to push it through. But if you guys, if you as a team would like for me to add additional step about revising QBE, we would be glad to do so.
That would be great.
Okay. We'll work on making those adjustments and get them out to you, hopefully tomorrow during Friday's update.
Thank you.
And the only other thing, thank you for that. The only other thing I would add is that we support at least one counselor per 450 students. If you want to make it a little more inclusive, or instead of CCSD supports a ratio of one counselor per 450, we might use the word at least one counselor per 450 students.
Yes, ma'am.
Additional feedback. The only thing I was thinking about, and I don't know how to capture this, or even if it should be captured here, but, you know, under enhancing student and school safety, obviously that's just a priority given where we are. Oftentimes there's an overlap though with school safety and punitive measures and the school to prison pipeline, practices that lead to that. And so this third one that says, you know, we support a budget that reflects a categorical grant for school safety to support the costs necessary to maintain and update security systems, obviously, and then to provide continuous training. But then this last one, to meet new challenges as they occur. I don't know that this is something we can tackle tonight, but I do want to just sort of place it on record. That is such a vague statement that you just hope it doesn't slip into other things. You know, like I know we've recently purchased shields. We also have purchased metal detectors for certain events. I know the county recently also, Mr. Denson, you may be able to speak more to this, recently approved, I think, either the reception of grant funds or the application of grant funds, and it was under, I think, safety, but it was for the Drug Task Force Unit. And so I just want us to be sure that we are keeping an eye on what is school safety and then what slides over into this very what can be subtle processes and resources that actually help build and maintain the school to prison pipeline. I know we can't say all of that in there, but that is something that I think is important, especially as we talk about safety, because that's such a buzzword in schools, and it's a reality. It's necessary, but it's also this buzzword, I think, across the state, in many states. So I don't know if you can say all that to the legislators, but if you can't, then I just said it. So hopefully it can register. I don't want us to slip into having resources that we are not stewards as board members, that we're not aware of how these things are, being used. So.
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Gant?
Go ahead.
So thank you, and again, I apologize for the delay, but as I look at the enhancing, hold on. I'm trying to navigate the YouTube mic, so no feedback. Okay, so as I look at enhancing student and school safety, it seems like it's missing the mental health piece of it. So I'm not sure how it would be incorporated, but it seems really based on just physical safety and taking measures to maintain physical safety, but I do kind of think we've seen a mental health piece, or at least an emotional aspect that can contribute to school safety. And so I don't know how the other board members feel about it, but that just seems to be maybe missing from the priority list.
And would you say, Ms. Hall, that, like where it talks about counselors, I know it talks about it more as far as a counselor ratio, but do you think it may fit there or under school safety? So that's the first question. Might it fit under school counselors, or do you think it should be under school safety? And the second question would be, am I hearing you allude to the need for mental health support, like beyond counselors? So your mental health professionals, and I may be projecting here, but behavior specialists, social workers, like that whole group of support specialists.
Yes and yes. I think, well, the answer to those questions, I don't think it necessarily has to be placed under school safety, as long as there is the understanding that school safety just doesn't encompass dealing with the physical aspects of the building and tactics and resources and trainings that our student resource officers may use, but there's that mental health piece in it. But I also think that there is broader. I think that it may be addressed by the counselors, but like you just named, there's so many other roles and positions within our district that could assist with that. So I don't know if it has to be codified in a legislative, something that we're going to be legislating for, so long as it's encompassing the idea, so that we're making sure that we are speaking to all of it and not just certain fragments.
Okay, and so we're going to transition to, I think, was it Mr. Denson, then Mr. Evans, and Ms. Hensley? But Ms. Hall, before we do that, would perhaps having a statement under enhancing student and school safety related to CCSD supporting, I guess, a budget or resources that encompass mental health resources and professionals, or something to that nature, either as a separate bullet, or maybe we could actually even include it inside of this third, if depending on what what the board thinks and what you think. Yes. And Dr. Hooker.
Sorry, that was very poorly timed. It's a 10-second delay, but yes, I think having a separate bullet point would be helpful.
Any thoughts from the board about that?
I was going to actually make the same points. And as I look at our legislative priorities, I'm wondering, I believe in the priority of lists, that you put the things that you think are most important at the top, and then you work your way down. And if I'm reading this, it feels to me that if we switch to these things, a lot of the problems that we're dealing with wouldn't happen. I mean, if we had, decent mental health inside of our schools, right, so we could identify the students that need that help and we get that to them. If we had, highly trained, certified personnel, that have the resources that they need. I look at the priorities here, and I see, a lot about local control, fine, and school safety, but, school safety starts with that kid. And it seems like, and I think Ms. Hall and I are in agreement on this, is that, we've got to provide these services. I mean, they've got to get there, and they need to be more of a priority. And I'm not sure if that's how this list was put together, or if it was just like, hey, we're just going to put some things on a piece of paper and go, which is how I normally put things on a piece of paper, so I get it. But I think that maybe the next time we put this together, I think we need to be a little bit more strategic in our thinking and maybe put our high priority stuff at the top.
And I can share with you, this was done alphabetically order, not necessarily by priorities. That's what this was done by, and I agree with you that mental health counselors are one of the most important things that we need to work on in our district and assisting our students. But if the board would like, we can rearrange it based upon the priorities. But this is something we worked hard on in working with other organizations to ensure we're in line with those as well.
I'm okay with leaving it the way it is because, we don't need to rock this particular boat at this time. But maybe in the future, we be a little bit more specific on what we think our priorities are, and we make those at the top of the list.
Thank you, sir. That's duly noted.
Thank you. And so I think my comments are a little bit in line with Dr. Gant's on some of the broad language under the student and school safety. The main one being CCS, the second one, CCSD supports the importance of training and resources to secure schools against any acts of violence. And I think that's, for the most part, I agree with, but I do have concerns, and I know that that I believe GAE also included, because there is concerns that there could be legislation put forward, potentially even mandating or being more forceful with legislation around arming teachers and school personnel. And that is not something that I support, but in that broad language, it could sound like that is a policy that we would be supporting if it was brought forward. So that is one concern I have there with that broad language.
Thank you.
Okay, this maybe I'm not understanding this, but I'm going to go back to the school counselors part as well. I feel like, I don't really know what our high school counselors do. I mean, I'm sitting here reading this and it says they support, the school counselors help students prepare for college and career readiness. I have high schoolers. I call the counselors when I need their schedule changed and I need whatever. But then you go down and it says it supports the ratio of one counselor per 450 students. And it says assist students with increasing mental health needs. I don't know, that seems astronomical to me. How is a student getting reached with their mental health needs when you have 450 students that you're meeting with for class? I almost think this needs to be a separate. What do we hire our counselors to do?
And I understand your concern, but at our schools, we do have mental health counselors who are separate. They do not have a caseload. So there are mental health counselors there who focus on the mental health, and the other counselors deal with the academic piece as that is concerned. And when you see 400 per 450 students, if I'm correct, that's the state counseling ratio for our counselors. So we just didn't pull this out of the air. I believe I'm correct in saying that is the ratio for counselors based upon the
So this, when I'm reading this, you're talking about counselors, caseload counselors that are helping, like, career path,
Academically.
not the mental health piece.
Right. There's a separate mental health counselor at each school, and if I'm not, there are two at each of the schools. At the high school level, correct. Yes.
Got it, okay. In which case, I agree with Nicole Hull that we need that separate mental health piece in our safety.
Okay, we'll be glad to make that revision. Okay.
Yeah, I think that would be great, because the 450, that ratio, we're not funded there because they fund us for less, right? That's why we have it here to say we want to really.
I think that's based upon QBE.
Okay.
I should know this. I'm certified in counseling. I should know this, and I think I'm correct. That is correct. Okay. Yes. 462.
Wow.
Okay.
But
Thank
we
you,
don't
Tim.
have that now. Like, the state does not, so you're saying the state does fund, or are we funding to reach? I mean, I know we all know this is not ideal, even 450 is a lot, but I'm just saying we still have to do extra stuff to get to the ratios that we have now.
Right, and if I'm, Mr. Gaskins, I'm asking you, when we think of our high schools, they have a total, Cedar has 7 counselors, 2 of them are mental health counselors. Central has 8 or 9 counselors, am I correct in saying that?
That's what I'm looking up, trying to confirm right now. We can update the board, of course, tomorrow, but yes, we think those numbers might be correct, but we're trying to confirm now.
And I want to give you accurate information. I don't want to pull it off the top of my head. So look into Friday's update, and we'll give you more detailed information concerning your questions.
So when I hear all of my fellow board members' thoughts, it kind of brings to mind here where on the first bullet for school counselors, that last part of the sentence, helping students with increasing mental health needs. So I wonder if maybe a healthy medium here is to take that out of the school counselor's responsibilities, because that's not what they're trained to do, and then have a separate section where we do talk about including additional services for students who do need mental health services.
Yes, Dr. Anderson, that's what we plan to revise. We'll work with our team in making that revision.
And let me just say, because I think I am splitting hairs. Let me not say we. I am getting ready to split hairs. School counselors are trained. Their curriculum typically overlaps a lot with community counselors. And so, there are just a few differences that you'll see typically, well, maybe 15 years ago, and I think this is still the same. And so I know that it's not like, it may not be their primary job, but what happens is that they really do become the default. And some counselors want to serve in that role, and some counselors, may prefer the guidance. And so I don't know that we should necessarily remove it, but I do think it needs, there needs to be a separate place for other support professionals in mental health, because counselors deal with mental health crises. They make reports, all of the stuff, all of the crisis stuff, and sometimes not things that aren't crisis.
And we're very fortunate in Clark County that we can afford to place mental health counselors in those positions. There are other counties who rely on their regular counselors to do both things, so we're fortunate. Again, we will work on this with our team to make those corrections or revisions and get back with you.
All right, we will, before we move forward, any final comments or suggestions? Thank you, Dr. Hooker. Move forward to board community committees, selection of representatives. We have listed here the committees that need representatives that we need to determine tonight. Envision Athens, Community Oversight Committee, Head Start, Early Head Start Council, and Athens Area Foundation. And I see GSBA, but I think we determined that we would wait. So any people? I know we still have people right now that we're serving in each of these. Just have to be reminded who they are.
So I think I have been on the COC and am willing to continue to do that, especially with Cedar Shoals coming online. But I know Kara was the Head Start person, I think, and so we will need to, I think, Karen, was it Kara Dykeman that was? Oh, Dr. Anderson. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. Prior to that. Okay, I apologize.
Okay, and Nicole was Envision Athens. And Dr. Maddox was Athens Area Foundation.
Yep. And Tim is Envision Athens too.
All right, so any changes, or what are the changes? What do you all want to do?
I do have one concern. I have a standing meeting every Tuesday for a committee that I have to serve on as a part of my job. So I have to leave the early Head Start policy meeting before, like when it's halfway through every single week, or every single time they meet. And so while I would love to continue to serve on it, I don't think that I'm doing a service by leaving every meeting halfway through. So if anyone else would like to serve on that committee, I would welcome the transition.
I'd volunteer to serve on that. Definitely, young child care is a passion of mine, so yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Denson.
Okay, so we have Mr. Denson on the Early Head Start Council. Well, let's go back to the top. Envision Athens, Ms. Hull, and any others. What do we want to do there?
So, when we got rid of our committees, right, we did that because
I was going to
people
welcome the transition for Mr. Denson, but he just transitioned to another board.
So are we doing a fruit basket turnover so that we rotate people through these different things? So that,
So
again,
I can stay on.
Thing of power and authority that we were getting rid of with the committees, or how are we doing this?
I'm sorry, could you say that again, Ms. Davis?
Every year in the 10 years I've been on the board, the committees and the assignments were done so that everybody rotated and everybody had a chance to do the work to better get, well, again, we don't have those committees, but to, again, have that exposure as opposed to having the same people doing the same things all the time. And so what I'm hearing you say is we're not following that policy. Now we're doing a volunteer kind of filling of those vacancies, or?
I do think we are following policy, which says that in January, I think we'll determine those committees. And so it does not, to my knowledge, but someone with more policy expertise on this particular thing, correct me, we have to just identify the person. And that is not in the role of the president, but the board collectively identifies who will serve on these committees. So I think we are following policy. The policy does not say that it has to be, it can't be turnover, or it can't be someone different, or it has to be the same person. I don't think it's specific to that.
I'll need to look at the policy again. Thank you.
And I'll say for Envision, I serve as a resident member appointee. So if Ms. Hull still wants to stay on there, that I am not serving as the school board or anything. So.
That's because you weren't on the school board, but now.
Dr. Anderson, I just text you. It may be more efficient for you to read it.
Ms. Hull says, if I can skip a committee, I will, but if I have to stay with one of them, it would be Envision Athens.
didn't understand.
Okay, so Ms. Hull is open to staying, but if anyone has a burning desire, maybe to get some experience on the Envision Athens Committee, it sounds like she's open to that as well.
And I would recommend that Mark be put on the COC. I think more than one of us can attend if we want to, but he could become the new rep for us on the COC because he would be interested in that work, I think, if you're willing to do that.
I would really like to be on that.
Okay, and so you're transitioning off, Dr. Yeager? I mean, I know we can attend.
I could, and it meets Tuesday morning, the first or second Tuesday morning. I can send you the calendar, but.
Yeah, that work. I don't have any class.
And Ms. Davis sometimes attends as well, so I think we can continue to attend, but he could be the official person and I'll rotate off in that regard.
Okay. And so what I have right now is Ms. Hull still at Envision Athens. COC is Mr. Evans. Early Head Start is Mr. Denson. Now we still have the Athens Area Foundation, which was, was that Dr. Maddox previously? So we need a...
Do we know when they meet? I would be interested in doing that one if I can make those meetings. I don't know when they meet. Okay. In the spirit of Linda's point that we should be rotating around.
Depending on the meeting time, I could maybe pick up Community Foundation. Do you know when they meet? I'm on their website right now, but I can't. Okay.
Okay, and so what we'll do is that we have the Envision Athens, as I mentioned, Ms. Hull, COC, Mr. Evans, Early Head Start, Mr. Denson, and Mrs. Hensley, we will put you as the representative for Athens Area Foundation unless there's a conflict. And if there's a conflict, we can add it back to our agenda and find a replacement. Does that sound good with the board?
Thank you, volunteered as well.
All right. We will, let's see, move forward. Are we at item? I'm sorry, I was the delegate originally for GSBA, and then that transitioned to Karina. So that is what was meant by GSBA. Am I, no?
But there's a representative, yeah.
Oh, see, I only started giving those updates because I was the delegate. So I didn't really know. I just thought that's what I should do. But no, if somebody wants, since we have it there, I'm sorry, I'm just all confused tonight. If we want to keep that, would someone like to just give us updates and be at least the ear for GSBA? I know they send out a lot of, policy updates and things like that.
So I thought that was our board's link into GSBA as a GSBA delegate in terms of the legislative agenda, especially in those things. And so that's why I was confused with the earlier statements you guys made. So I'm still at this point not sure where we are. Because that was, I think they still have divided the state.
So it sounds like we've just sort of been operating it as separately over these past couple of years, but initially that delegate was the same, I think may have been the same person that did the updates. Yeah, he was, it was all in the same person. Okay, well, do we want to keep that? Again, this is separate from the delegate, but at least have someone that has their ear to the ground or to GSBA.
It would seem that we would want the delegate to be the person that would also report back to us, so that way they're not, they would be abreast of what's going on, right?
Any thoughts around that?
I mean, in the past, that's what it was. Mr. Davis did both. He served on the Government Relations Committee, so he kept his ear on what was happening legislatively throughout the session. But he also served as the delegate until Dr. Gant took over, so he also did that part. So, I mean, there's different ways to do it. I don't know if one is better than the other. Maybe that is more efficient. So.
You know, they are our, what are they? They're, GSBA is our underwriter, right, for our insurance and our policies and stuff. We have a relationship with them, and we're a fairly large district. I would like for us to have a presence. So I think it's important that we have a delegate to go to the assembly and carry our vote for the organization. And then I think the other part of GSBA was a person who literally was our representative to, as a District 11 member, and that was Greg Davis, his role. And so he went to those meetings for the District 11 section. I think it's us and 5 or 6 other counties. So that's a separate thing from the annual meeting where we vote and support GSBA.
Would you like to do that?
So it's sort of, what I hear is that we could benefit either way, right? If the person is the same person, but there's.
Yeah, they're gonna keep making decisions on our behalf, and we keep, we're one of their big customers, and so yes, I think we definitely need to have a presence.
Okay.
In
And
their
so.
delegate assembly.
All right, and so why don't we, if everyone is okay with this, because we haven't decided who the delegate will be yet, we need to, and we're still sort of working through that process, but we also may need a person who is just GSBA, who can maybe attend the District 11 meetings, who can share with us whatever is happening. And so maybe, I think for this time around, maybe we keep the GSBA liaison or whatever community committee person. And then once we figure out our delegate, those two people can work together and, decide what needs to be shared, things like that. And if we decide to do it differently next year, then we certainly reserve that right.
Sure.
But because we're still sort of navigating and clarifying this delegate role, I wouldn't want us to hold that up when things are happening over the next couple of months that we may need to be aware of. Is that okay? Okay. So who then who would be our GSBA community or representative?
That's a great
I think
role
Ms.
for
Davis
people
would
that
be
like to
good.
be activists, and we have a new board member that hasn't been seated yet, so that might be a perfect role for that person. Unless somebody else wants to volunteer.
Ms. Davis, I'd like to nominate you for it.
Ms. Davis is on the MARC committee. You appointed me already, I'm done.
I would second that.
Yep. No, thank you.
Okay, so we still need to fill it?
I will volunteer to be the GSBA liaison until we clarify the roles. Does that
Yeah,
work?
like that.
Yep.
Okay.
Perfect.
Is that okay?
Unless someone really wants to do this.
Does
Hey.
anyone really is gonna lose sleep tonight? I'm just kidding. Okay, so Mr. Evans will serve in that role, and then it may be a while before because we're sort of like, I'm sure Dr. Anderson will want to really go back through the policy, and I need to because I never understand the GSBA delegate timeline. But yes, if you would serve in that as a liaison, that would be great.
I do not mind serving in that role. Thank you.
All right, wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you to everyone that has served previously. We'll move forward to our almost last item, sort of, on the agenda. These are our items for approval. The floor is open. If there's any additional information that needs to be shared, if there are motions that need to be made, the floor is open for those.
I have no additional information for any of the items for approval.
I move that we approve numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4.
All right, we have a motion on the floor by Dr. Yeager to approve items 1, 2, 3, and 4.
I'll
These are
second that motion.
okay. Mr. Evans seconded it. These are our board meeting minutes, Head Start Program Governance Plan approval, the annual grant approved, pre-K annual grant approval intent to apply, and the pre-K summer transition grant approved intent to apply. Any follow-up questions or discussion? Okay, all in favor of approving those 4 items listed in the motion, if you would raise your hands and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Sorry about that. Any opposed, the same signs? Okay, we'll move forward. We have items, the items remaining are the budget timeline, personnel board report, the board addendum, policies, field trips, and Clark Middle modular unit lease.
So I move that we approve items 5, 6, 7, and 8. Oh, no, we don't need to do 8. We need to do 8 separately, sorry. 5, 6, and 7.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor by Dr. Yeager to approve items 5 through 7, which are the budget timeline, the personnel board report, and the personnel board addendum.
I'll second.
And I'm sorry, let me just back up just a little bit to get back to the recommendation with these 4 things, the budget timeline, the personnel report, and the personnel board addendum. Is this your recommendation?
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then Dr. Yeager has made a motion to approve those 3 items, and Ms. Hensley, somebody seconded that. Okay, we have a second. Follow-up discussions or conversations? All right, all in favor of approving those 3 items, if you would raise your hands and say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, the same signs? All right, the floor is back open. Yep, thank you. That motion carries. Both of those motions carry.
I would like to make a motion to divide the question on number 8 policies for board approval so that we are voting on policies GAE and IDBA separately from the other policies.
All right, and so you want to pull out, say those again, GAE, and what was the other one, Mr. Dixon?
GAE and IDBA, so that is the sex education policy and the discrimination complaint policy.
IDBA. Okay.
Just so, in doing that, just so honestly, I personally have more time to review those. So.
Okay, and so let me be sure I understand your motion is that we approve all of these policies with the exception of GAE and IDBA?
Yeah, however we want to do it. Yeah, just so that we're voting on them as 2 separate things, so that those 2 I'd like to make a motion that the table, then we can make a motion to approve the other ones.
Okay, well, we'll stick with that motion to table those 2 items. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, any follow-up discussion or questions? The motion is to table those items. Let me be sure I'm clear, Mr. Denson. Is it to table the items or to vote on them tonight separately?
I guess I was just parliamentary, just trying to divide the question so that they could be talked about separately.
Separately, okay.
And then, but however we need to do it. Yeah, but
Okay, I think we're in order.
okay.
So we have a motion and a second. Any follow-up discussion about moving these 2 policies?
Which 2 are they again?
The GAE, which is the discrimination complaints,
Right,
and IDBA, sex education.
thank you.
And so we have a motion to,
I guess my, declare, it would be to postpone it until the February 9th meeting, yeah, for those 2.
okay. So we have a motion to postpone or to table the discussion and action on 2 of the policies, GAE and IDBA until the February meeting, and we have a second. Is that in the clear? Are we in the clear, Mr. Pruitt?
If that's okay with Mr. Denson, I think originally he was making a procedural motion to divide that agenda item into 2 agenda items and then have separate votes on each of them, but.
I was, but if we don't need to, yeah, this gets to my intent. So.
Right.
Yeah.
So this does, okay. All right, all in favor of tabling those 2 policies that are listed until our February work session and board meeting, if you would, raise your hands and say aye. Aye. Any opposed, the same signs? All right, so that motion carries. Those 2 items and policies will be added to our February agenda. We have our remaining policies here, as well as field trips and the modular unit.
I'll make a motion for us to go ahead and approve the remaining policies with staff's recommendation.
Okay, I'm sorry, I heard only part of your, can you say it again for me?
I'll move to go ahead and accept staff's recommendation and approve the rest of the policies, the remaining policies.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a second by Ms. Davis. Any follow-up conversations, discussions? Okay, all in favor of approving the remaining policies listed under item 8, if you would, raise your hands and say aye. 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 Any opposed? Same signs. All right. The floor is open for, yep, that motion carries. Thank you, Dr. Anderson.
I move that we approve item 9, approve field trips, and item 10, approval for the Clark Middle Modular Unit lease.
Second. Okay, we have a motion to approve items 9 and 10, the field trip and the Clark Middle Modular Unit lease, and a second. Any follow-up questions or discussion? All right, all in favor of approving those 2 items, if you would raise your hands and say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, we are at our item 11, which is adjournment.
I so move.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Davis, a second by Dr. Anderson. Seeing that there are no objections, we are adjourned at 8:56.